For those of you that are joining, hopefully some of you have been in some of my trainings, right? I know a few of you have. I looked over the list, and I really appreciate you guys. There's a big turnout here. We have roughly around 50 people joining us today for this 7 Habits of Highly Effective VPI Users webinar session. So thank you guys very, very much for attending this. I really hope that you all get a lot out of this session. As you see, we have an hour, right, for the session, which really, if anybody sat in on my training sessions, we know that I can speak for about 4 hours on this stuff, right? So putting all of these 7 key items into an hour is going to be a little bit difficult, but what I would like to do is show you exactly what those 7 items are that we're going to be covering today, and ask you guys if there are any questions. If you could either chat those to me using your GoToMeeting window on the right-hand side. If you have that panel open, you could actually chat those items to me, and I will get back to you with an answer. Or if you prefer, you can email those questions over to me, and I'm just going to let you know my email address. It's jrubenstein, spelled R-U-B-E-N, S-T-E-I-N, at VPI-corp.com. Okay? If you do chat those questions to me and we do end up having some time at the end there, I'll take a look at those and then we'll go ahead and try to answer some of those questions. If for whatever reason, you guys, I can't answer a question, which it's likely sometimes, I will get back to you with an answer, definitely. Okay. So that being said, hopefully all of you can see my screen at this point. What I want to talk about are these items that we're looking at here for the 7 habits of highly effective VPI users. Now, I know some of you use vPortal all the time. You probably know it even better than I do, right? But for some of you, some of this stuff is really new. And what I'm going to be covering are, like I said, these 7 key areas here. Some of these things you might not have known that you could even do in here. Like, for example, setting your start page. This is going to be a nice one for you guys because it's going to help you save some time, right? We're all about time saving. We're all very busy people. We have a lot going on a day-to-day basis. So what we want to do is make your lives as simple and easy as possible within the vPortal application, right? So the very first thing here, setting a start page. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to set your start page? Well, we all know that maybe we have several different modules that we need to go into on a daily basis, but maybe some of us who are kind of very interested in the evaluation aspect, so we're focusing on the quality module mainly, that's where we always want to land when we log into this application. We always want to land on that quality evaluation page, right? Search evaluations, that's where we want to live. So you might want to set your start page to always land on that search evaluation page. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. Also, modifying your search screen layouts, okay? I'm going to show you how to manipulate your search grid, okay? How to move the columns around. Believe it or not, I do get that question asked a lot. How do I change things around in here? Is that a possibility? Can I maneuver things around? Can I change the size of each column? Absolutely. Yes, you can. And it is on a user-by-user basis. So I'm going to talk about that, how we can go about performing that action there. Also, I don't know if you guys have sat in on any of my trainings, I put a lot of emphasis around the use of filters. Hyperfilters, I always say, are going to be your best friends by the end of the training. And I really want to draw some attention to that. I want to put some useful information around those hyperfilters. And I like to use roughly around 5 to 6 hyperfilters. We're probably going to touch upon 4 of those 6. I like to use flags. I like to use duration hyperfilter. I love comment text, which I'm going to actually show you as an action, that you can add comments to a recording. You can also add attachments to a recording, which is one of these 7 items here that we're going to cover. Okay, so I am going to show you how to use comments and attachments and then search for those items using these filters. Okay, also agent name, you guys, that's a big filter to use. Okay, so I'm definitely going to put some emphasis on those 4 hyperfilters. Also, creating custom searches. This is a big one as well, right? Again, a time saver for us. I don't know if you guys noticed, but when you launch the application for the first time, you guys are always landing on today's calls and today's interactions. Okay, that's giving you basically everything for today, right? But if we have just a few maybe agents that we want to monitor at one time, we might want to create a custom search that allows us to just monitor those 3 or 4 agents. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create and set up some custom searches of your own. And then, like I said earlier, we'll talk about adding attachments and interactions, or 2 interactions rather. We'll also talk about adding and editing flags to your interactions. Okay, flags are great as well. And we'll also use and be able to use a hyperfilter to search for those flagged items. And then lastly, we'll get into exporting our media for external review. Okay, there's several different ways that you can actually export within the application. So I'm actually going to go through the 3 different ways that we can export. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. I'm going to go ahead and launch the application so we can see and go through those 7 habits of highly effective VPI users. Okay, so I'm hoping everybody can see my screen here, and I'm hoping everybody has seen a similar page to this. Okay, you guys might not have as many fancy schmancy widgets on there like I do, but when we first launch the application, we all land on this My VPI tab right here. Okay, now like I said earlier, when you're setting your start page, that's our first key item. Maybe you live under your search evaluations page the most, right? You're a quality evaluator, that's what you do, right? This is probably where you want to live and land every time you launch this application. So I'm going to go ahead and set this screen as my start page. So every time I launch the vPortal application, I log in, I put my username and password in, this is where I'll land. To set your start page, you hover over the My VPI tab right over here, scroll down to Options, and Set a Start Page. It's going to give you a notification here, page has successfully set as start page, and go ahead and click the OK button. And now, if I was to log off and log back in again, that's where I should land. And let's just make sure that we've done that properly. I'm going to go ahead and log off and log back in again. And look where we just landed, right? Quality Search Evaluations page. So it's a great time saver for you guys, right? So instead of having to land on this My VPI tab, which maybe it does give you all of the information that you love and like, and you want to be able to land on this page all the time. But if you realize, you know, every time I launch this, I have to then go over to quality because this is where I live. Okay, so now hopefully you guys know how to set your start page. I don't know if you guys also noticed under here, when I went to Options under that My VPI tab, I have an Add as Quick Link option. Okay, this is great as well. This is almost like your favorites when you're saving your favorites in Internet Explorer or Mozilla, right? And you have a favorite web page that you land on. This is sort of that way, right? So if I realize, you know, I like landing on the search evaluations page, that's great. But I also like to sometimes go over to my interaction search really quickly from here. So I could set a quick link. And now I'm right over here on my interaction search. And I can have as many quick links as I want to over here. So how do I add a quick link then? So let's just say I really like the video segment search. Sometimes I want to evaluate a screen capture, right? Make sure my agents have their screen set up properly. And I have an evaluation form around that. So maybe I want to go ahead and set this as a quick link. Again, going over to your My VPI tab and then Options, here's my Add as Quick Link. Gives you a little notification again. and it will refresh this page here. And now if I hover over my VPI, I can now see, oops, doesn't see the quick link there. Let me go ahead and try to set that one more time. We could see the quick link under there. Okay, and then I'd be able to actually click on that, and it would take me right over to that video screen there. Let me try setting that one more time. This gives you a little bit more experience too. Video segment search. I'm on that search now. My VPI, options, add as quick link. Okay. That's one of those 7 key areas there, setting as start page and setting some quick links. That was a little bonus there. The next item I want to discuss with you is modifying your search layout, right? This is your search grid. Hopefully everybody is aware that this is where all of the call recordings live, all of your screen captures. If you are getting screen captures, this is where they're all going to live. And if I go back to my interaction search here, I now get a different set of columns here, right? I have my flag column over here. Everybody's hopefully familiar with flags. You have your interaction building block icon. This is telling me what search I'm on. I could see the start time and date of every call, duration, agent's name. I have a phone icon here indicating how many items make up an interaction. So I have several different columns here, but as we see, they're quite spaced out, right? You have duration here. Duration is a small column, it should be at least, because when you're looking at duration here, it's not very big, but look at how long the duration column actually is here. And maybe, you know, because I'm starting to use attachments and comments more often, maybe I want those closer to my agent name. So you do have the ability to change and modify what you're seeing here. And I'm going to do that by going to my search menu here and choosing Change Layout. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that here. And now at this point, if those of you are following along with me, this is great because you guys can actually do this as I'm showing you. You can move your duration column if you'd like to. Once you get those crosshairs there, I can drag this to a spot where I'd like to see it. Drag the comment bubble here. Maybe I want that a little closer to my agent name as well. This is my evaluation icon. Maybe I want my phone icon a little bit closer as well. Now I've got everything kind of how I want it. Let's drag this over as well. Now maybe what I want to do is kind of resize some items. So let's resize duration. I'm going to do that by hovering over that top column there. I get that arrow, and now I can drag with my left mouse click, and now I'm starting to see how I can modify this, right? Make it a little bit cleaner. Make it how I want it. Now this is on a user-by-user basis, you guys, right? So if I go in and make a change here, that's going to be seen by my profile only. Okay, so if let's say Martha goes in and Martha creates this fantastic layout, unfortunately that's going to be Martha's layout only. Okay, so it's on a user-by-user level. Once I'm done making my changes here, just going to update this a bit more. Look at how clean that looks. It's like cleaning a dirty room. You're going to go in to your search menu, and you have save layout now, right? We had modify before, or change, and now I'm going to go ahead and save that layout. Okay, so now every time I launch this page, this is what it's going to look like. Now I can do the same for my quality search evaluation page too. So I'm going to have to go through and actually change this for each of my modules, right? So I would come in, make some changes again to my quality search evaluations page. I would do the same for Module Explorer if I do have the coaching module, okay? You could do this throughout the application, but just because I did it in the interaction search doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change in the audio segment, the video segment search, right, or any other of modules as well. So I'm going to need to take some time, go in and modify that information. So again, I'm under now the search evaluations page. I go to search, change my layout. I get my crosshairs again, and I can start to maneuver items around from here. Move my date started. Okay, maybe I don't necessarily like that. Maybe I'm, fed up with it. I went through and I actually have a really hot lunch date, and I've been in here a long time kind of maneuvering things around, but I'm ready to just get out and reset my layout. I liked it the way it was, no problem. I could go to search, reset my layout. Once I'm done, I save my layout, and now it's back to the way it was before. Okay, that is your second item there, modifying a search screen layout. Okay, just to recap what we've already learned, setting your start page under the My VPI tab here, options, set a start page. Every time I launch the application, now I'll land on the search evaluations page. Now, if I want to, I can also change my layout. I do that under search, change layout, right? If I want to go back to the way my layout was previously, just reset your layout. And then don't forget to save, okay? Our next item, effective use of filters. Okay, I love filters so much. I don't know if any of you have sat in on my trainings. I really put a lot of emphasis on my hyperfilters. Okay, I love them. I use them every single time I come into this application. So I really want to put some ideas around these hyperfilters, why you would use them and when you would use them. Okay, by default, many of you should have the agent name hyperfilter there. This is where your hyperfilters live, on this blue band right here. Hyperfilters are great to narrow down and drill into the data that you're looking at. Okay, right now I'm looking at 245 recordings, and that's just for today. Okay, many of you, I'm sure, have even thousands of call recordings that you have to hunt and peck through to find exactly what it is you're looking for, right? Some of you might have 500, 600 at this point, okay? So we don't want you guys to have to scroll through 600 thousands of calls. We want you guys to be able to drill into that data really quickly, okay? And you're going to be able to do that using your filters here. So again, I've added agent name. I have added also comment text, duration, and flag, okay? And these I found are the best filters for me personally, okay? I love using flags to locate a call. Maybe I'm listening to a call and I'm thinking, this is a great training call. I could go in and flag a call and then go back later and locate that call based on a training flag, for example. Okay, so filters are great to drill into that data. So let's talk about how we add those filters. Okay, everybody likes to use this filter button, right? It's right there, it's convenient. You click on the button, it gives you a box of filters. From here, I could start to choose my filters, right? I have comment text, I have duration, flag, and agent name. And if I was to go choose another item, it is going to warn me, hey, you can have up to 4 hyperfilters. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click my Save button. Before I do, though, I'm actually going to choose just another filter because I want to show you guys something. I uncheck duration. Let me go back in really quickly. I uncheck duration up here. What I want to add is direction there. And now duration is gone. Direction has now taken the place. Okay. Now, that filter button that I just used, you guys, is a temporary way to add some filters. Okay, and this is probably the #1 question that I get is, when I go to add filters using this filter button here, I log off, I log back in, or I go to my search evaluations page, I come back over to interaction search, and those filters I added are gone, right? How do I add them permanently? Okay, that's a good question. How do you add those permanently? Let's go through that. Once we add them permanently, we're going to go through each of those filters and use it to show you exactly how to use those filters. So I'm going to go ahead and relaunch this interaction search. I'm just going to refresh this search here and watch what happens to that direction filter that I added. No longer there, right? We now have duration back in its place. So what if I realize, I'm using that direction hyperfilter all the time? Okay, you can actually create that as a part of your profile, right? Make that a permanent feature. I'm going to go to my search menu. We've been here before when we were changing our layout. I'm going to go modify now. And it's going to take me into a screen that looks like this. This is where I can actually start to build a custom search of my own, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But for now, all I want to do is add some permanent filters to this today's interaction search. I'm going to go to my hyperfilters button, and I'm going to select Add Remove. And I'm going to uncheck, let's say, duration, and maybe I'm going to check off direction now. Those are the 4 that I want to be permanent to my today's interaction search. And I'm not quite done yet, right? I just made that change under Hyperfilters Add Remove. I need to go over to my Options menu and choose Save and Exit. Once this relaunches, I'm now going to see direction in the place of duration. Okay, so now I have these 4 hyperfilters set there, right? And I know I'm going to use these hyperfilters all the time. Agent name, it's a great one because I have the ability to type a specific agent in that I, let's say, want to monitor, or I can use a blue arrow if I have one beside my hyperfilter. If I have a blue arrow, I love to use the blue arrow because it gives me a pick list to choose from. So for example, let's just say I want to get back all of Jessica Douglas's calls for today. I can type that information into the search bar here, select Jessica Douglas, click my OK button, then click refresh, and now I'm just looking at Jessica Douglas's calls. So you guys, I went from 200 and some calls down to 19 that quickly. And that is the power of those hyperfilters, right? So now at this point, I'm looking at just Jessica Douglas's calls, and I'm planning on just doing some evaluations on Jessica Douglas, right? But I realize, out of these 19 calls, maybe she does have some really short calls that maybe won't be so good to listen to, or maybe I'm just looking to monitor her inbound calls over her outbound calls, right? Maybe she's made a couple of personal calls. I don't necessarily want to evaluate those. That's where I can use my direction hyperfilter. Again, if I have a blue arrow beside a filter, I like to use my pick list here. Just give me back Jessica Douglas's inbound calls for today. Now look, I'm down to 16. Okay, so you guys can see that you can use these hyperfilters together to really, really drill into that data. Okay, and if I'm done here, right, I've performed my evaluations, I can clear out my hyperfilters using this clear button here, and that's now going to take me back to my 260 calls. So you guys see the power of these filters, right? Let's do that one more time. I'm going to choose Jessica. Click my refresh. Just down to Jessica's calls. Give me Jessica's inbound calls. And click refresh. 16 calls now. Now let's say I'm listening to a few of these calls and I'm thinking, hey, maybe I want to flag some of these items. I'm able to flag a call by coming over here to the left-hand side here, this flag column, and I could start to add some flags to these calls. Maybe I know I want to evaluate this particular call here. Maybe I want to evaluate this call. I'm just clicking on the flag that I would like to use by clicking on that dimmed out icon there. Okay, I'm just going to flag a couple of her calls because I want to show you, and we're going to get more in depth with flagging, but I want to show you how to use the flag filter. Again, blue arrow. I know I've chosen a couple of calls to evaluate. Click my refresh button. Look at that. I'm down to two calls that quickly. Now I can go in and evaluate those calls. Maybe now I can go in and export those calls. Okay, there's a lot you can do once you drill into the data. I'm going to clear this out. Gets me back to my 265 calls now. And now the last item I have is comment text. What do we use comments for? Okay, I've heard several people use them for several different things, right? One of the big ones I've heard people use comments for is training purposes. They put in a comment bubble, this is a great training call. And then they can go back later on using a comment text typer filter to locate those calls that they've added comments to. But not only that, you can actually get back items that you've attached items to. We're going to talk about attachments in a little bit, how you can attach items to recordings. But the comment text typer filter, if you use it the right way, will allow you to get back both the comments and the attachments. So that way you can then look at those items, assess them. Maybe you need to edit them, right? Maybe we've realized, hey, I've put training calls to 15 calls and I need to just edit some of those. Maybe all 15 of those aren't great training calls. So what I can do is enter in here training. Give me back anything with training in it. And I want to show you something. When I click refresh here, what's going to happen? I'm not getting anything back. Okay, why am I not getting anything back though? I'm going to go ahead and clear this back out. The reason for that, you guys, did you realize that this time I didn't use that blue arrow? I don't have one to choose from, right? This is one of those items that I actually have to type in to get data back. But notice I have an operator drop down here, okay, and it's on what we call equals. And if I choose to put in training just like that, I most likely am not going to get anything back because I'm using the equal operator. If I use equals, I have to put in the entire string just as I added it in my comment bubble, right? When I first added it in there. If I put a capital T in there, I have to include that. If I put training call, I have to include the entire string. Okay, well maybe I forget how I added it. So that's why I like to use the contains operator. Now if I put training in, look what I've gotten back. 24 training calls, right? And if I open my comments up, here's a great training call, right? And the reason using that equal operator didn't bring that back is because there's great and there's training in there. So again, you guys, just to recap that, I'm going to clear this back out. Use your contains operator. By default, you are on equals. Okay, so if you're going in and, hey, you know what, today I'm going to look for my training calls, just remember to use your operator dropdown, go to contains, and then go ahead and click refresh. Okay, and now I'm down to just my 24 training calls. Okay, so those are some of your filter options there, right? The last filter I want to show and talk about is the duration hyperfilter. Okay, I do realize that I use that quite often, especially when I'm evaluating calls that are under a certain duration. For example, maybe I don't necessarily want to evaluate those calls that are under 20 seconds, right? There's not a whole lot of meat to those calls. I like those calls that are a little bit longer, maybe over a minute, something along those lines. Well, let's see, I'm looking here at this duration filter and I realize again, I don't have the blue arrow, right? Like flag does and like agent name does. So again, I go to my operator dropdown. And this time we see a different set of operators, right? We have greater than, we have less than in equal to, we have greater than or equal, we have less than. I'm going to go ahead and choose greater than and say in seconds, bring me back all calls that are over 120 seconds long. I'm still at 108 calls, right? Which is where I probably would use then my agent name filter to then go in there and drill into the data a bit more. But now I've got back 108 calls, and now these calls are just over a minute, 2 minutes long rather. If I click on my duration column here, notice it actually allows me to sort, and now I'm looking at these in an ascending order. Clicking again, I get the really long calls up at the top. Hopefully nobody ever has to evaluate a 4-hour call, but now that's up at the top for me. So hyperfilters, you guys, very, very useful features of the application. All right. So moving on, now that we know how to create custom filters of our own, right? We come in, we set up some filters. This is again on a user by user level, okay? Now that we know how to set up some filters, maybe now what I want to do is set up some custom searches of my own. I realize, you know, I'm coming in here and I'm seeing all 278 calls in here and I'm seeing all of these different agents in here, but really I just focus on 3 of these 17 agents that I'm looking at. So how do I go about creating a custom search? I can go all the way over here to my right-hand side. If everybody tilts their head to the right, they can see this sideways menu here. And I see this My Searches menu. This is going to be really important for you guys, especially when you start creating custom searches of your own. You can have as many custom searches as you want, okay? And again, they are created on a user-by-user basis. So right now, you guys can see that I have these 5 searches that I've created. 3 of them are my default searches. 3 of them, every time I land on interaction search, I'm always landing on today's interactions. If I land on audio segment search, I'm always going to land on today's calls. And if I land on screen capture, I'm always going to land on today's screen captures. Okay, so these are some of my default searches here, and you can tell that they're default because they're bolded. These other ones I have to come in here and manually run. Now, if I do want to create a brand new search, I just come in here and click the New button. And that's going to take me into this window here, which allows me to create a particular search. Notice here, please select the type of search that you want to go ahead and create. Well, I personally like the interaction search. Some people like the audio segment search. It just depends on what flavor of search you want to choose, right? Interactions gives me the full picture here. Sometimes it gives me both screen capture along with the audio recordings, which is why I personally like to choose the interaction search here. And now we've seen this screen before, right, you guys? You remember when I was adding permanent filters to that custom search? Well, it's the same screen here. It's just that we didn't go in and start to create any query criteria here. But now that's what I am going to do. And I'm going to call this my agent search. I can enter a description here. Maybe I want to enter the names of my agents. Okay? Or I can leave that blank. It's not mandatory. And now what I can start to do is build my query here. What do I want to bring back every time I run this search? Well, the first thing I would urge you guys to do is choose, under the common area, start time. This is going to allow me to bring back a certain amount of calls, right, based on a certain date and time parameter. Okay? So let's just say I'm planning on evaluating my agent's calls for the last 30 days. That's what I want you to bring me back, is the last 30 days worth of calls for those agents. Also, you'll notice the prompt at runtime button, right? I'm going to check that box so you guys can see what that is going to do when I run this search. I'm going to go ahead and prompt at runtime and select the last 30 days and click my OK button. The next item I want to choose is going to be agent name, because after all, this is my agent search, right? And we do realize here something, hopefully. You guys see that this is very similar to those hyperfilters that I've been using, right? I bring agent name back and I get the blue arrow here. If I click my blue arrow, I get that pick list. And now I can start to choose some of my agents here, right? I check the boxes. Let's just choose a couple of agents here, click those, click my OK button, starts to build my query here. Maybe there's some other items here, right? I'm evaluating some calls, so maybe give me back those calls that are greater than a specific duration, just like my hyperfilter. Give me back calls that are over 60 seconds. Now I can go ahead and add some permanent hyperfilters to this search that I'm creating, right? I come in here, I choose hyperfilters, add, remove. I get my box of filters here, and now I can start to add some additional hyperfilters. Maybe give me flag, right? Maybe give me comment text, and click my save button. Now I go up to my options menu, save and exit. Now when we relaunch this search, what's going to happen is it's going to land on today's interactions, because that's my default search. So that search that I just created, you guys, lives under my searches here. There's my agent search that I just created. So I manually run that by clicking on it. And remember when I asked it to prompt me at runtime for start time there? This is what it's allowing me to do. It's allowing me to change my mind here. Do I still want to bring back calls for those agents for the last 30 days, or do I want to customize it even more? I can make my date and time changes here, or I can continue with last month and go ahead and run the query. Now look, I've got Jessica Douglas, right? I've got Adam Anthony. Those are the agents that I've chosen, and that's all that I am seeing. So now I have my flag filter here, my comment text hyperfilter here, right? I can go in, I can perform evaluations, I can flag on these calls, right? Lots of different things I can do now that I've narrowed down my search parameters. So that's the power of creating your custom searches, right? It takes you from viewing all of your agents to narrowing it down to criteria that's meaningful to you, right? And if I realize, you know what, I'm using that agent search all the time, okay? Today's interactions is a great search, but I don't need it as much as I need this my agent search. So you guys can unlock the panel here and set that one as your default. If I realize I'm never using that one and I just want to clean house, do some spring cleaning here, I can delete that one. It's not permanent. And go ahead and lock your panel when you're done. So creating custom searches, you guys, very, very powerful, as well as hyperfilters, right? Allows you to drill into the data quickly and easily. So that being said, right, now we've kind of talked about flagging calls to your interactions, right? We even saw how we could go in and use the flag filter, get back those calls that you've quickly flagged. Down to my 2 calls here. All right, well, let's just say I searched for them. I'm ready to either export them. This is my evaluation flag after all, right? This is evaluate. It's telling me, go ahead and evaluate. Maybe I've started my evaluation. Now I can go ahead and clear out this flag, right? I clicked on the icon. I get this box of flags here, and I clear out my flag. Now if I go to refresh, I'm down to 1 flagged call. That's going ahead and editing or removing your flags. Very simple, right? I'm going to go ahead and go back and clear this out and go back to my 289 calls and just show you how you can use your flag feature here. Flagging lives under this flag column here. Many of these are dimmed out, meaning that they have no flags appended just yet. It even says when you hover over that icon, no specified flag. But if I left click in here, I get a box of flags. Okay, now some of you might have all kinds of different flags. Maybe you've gone into administration at some point. If you have the proper permissions, you can go in and actually customize some of these items. Okay, we've set an evaluate flag. We've also set a training call flag. So let's just say I'm listening to this call and I think it is a great training call. Got my flag appended now, right? I'm listening to this call and I think the same thing. This is a great training call as well. Maybe I'm listening to multiple calls and I'm thinking these are great, right? You don't want to have to go in and flag just 1 call at a time, right? Let's say you have listened to maybe 40 calls and you're thinking those are all great training calls. Maybe what you've done is you've gone in, you've selected, let's say, Adam's calls here using your filter. Click refresh. I've got 20 of Adam's calls, all right? So instead of 20 or 40, we've got 20. But let's just say I think all of these Adam Anthony calls are really good, right? Or maybe I need to evaluate all of these. I can turn on my multi-select. This is huge, you guys. I'm going to pause for a moment on this. Multi-select under your search menu, once turned on, gives you an additional column beyond that flag column there, right? Now I have this additional checkbox. I can start to check off multiple calls that I want to flag, that I want to export, that I want to comment on or attach items to, all at one time. It's a huge time saver for you guys, right? Instead of having to go in one at a time and flag each individual call, I can now go up through my Actions menu and notice I have a flag option right here. I choose Flag. I select Training Call and check that out. All of them have been flagged for me, right? To unselect all of those calls, I've checked the top box here. They're not highlighted any longer, right? And now I can go in, use my flag filter, and say, just give me back those training calls. Boom, there they are. Now here's another trick for you guys. If I, let's say, have done everything I needed to do with these training calls, right? I've exported them to a file, so every time I get a new hire, I can just push those out to them. I can now clear out my flags, but nobody wants to go in and clear out each individual flag, right? Especially if you have 30, 40 calls that you flagged. So what you can do is with your multi-select turned on, and again, you guys, really quickly, this is a user by user thing. So if I turn multi-select on, that's just for my profile only. If I log off and log back into the application, you're still going to have multi-select on until you go in and manually turn that off. Okay? But now I've highlighted all of these items, all 9 of them. I can go up through my Actions menu, flag, clear all those flags out. Okay? Time saver. We're all about those time savers, right? I'm going to clear this back out. And now we're going to start to add attachment to these items, right? We've talked about flags. We've talked a little bit about comments. But what do we want to do with attachments? Many people actually attach emails that also go along with a specific call recording, right? So you can see the customer's entire kind of experience, right? You can see exactly what they've gone through from cradle to grave, right? If you include that attachment there. What's great about attachments is that you can actually export those items with the attachments included. So let's just say you're also listening to this call, you're listening to Adam Anthony's call, you're thinking, you know what, this is a great call, but maybe he missed the mark on something. You can add a policy or procedure to that recording and then maybe export that out to Adam Anthony to listen to. Not only would he be able to listen to the call, but he'd actually see the attachments that you've included and be able to read that policy right there. So this is your attachments column. I click on the dimmed out icon. It looks like a little tag. Go ahead and add a new attachment here. Now these are my specifications, right? I can add an attachment of a max size of 10 megabytes, and that's per attachment. I can have multiple attachments per recording if I want to. Also, you'll notice these different file types here. So if I do have some sort of wacky file, HTML for example, you'll notice is not one of these items. I can zip it, and then I can attach that item. If I want to include some sort of smiley face, maybe this is a great, fantastic call, and I want to put a smiley face to it. So that way when I push it out to my agent, he's got this nice picture there. Okay, I can add a JPEG. I can add a WAV file if I want to. But I'm going to go ahead and browse for an item here. Just choose something random. Well, let's do this training summary here. Click my OK button. Now I've got one attachment included to this recording here. So if I was to then export this, I could choose to include the attachment to go along with this recording. And this is what Adam Anthony would actually see here. Okay, I'm going to have to load it one more time here. And he would be able to see that PDF item. Okay, so that is one of those great features that's kind of hidden there. That's what Adam would see, my training summary here. It's one of those hidden items, right? Some people use it all the time. I think it's a great feature. Also, again, if you're listening to a call and you're thinking, this is great, however, again, Adam missed the mark right about here, I heard something. I can add an attachment right within the audio bar itself. Notice, you guys, I can also actually add a comment right within the audio bar. So I can append a comment or an attachment at a particular spot within the call. So if I click in here, I get that same box, browse for an item, and add that item right within the recording itself, rather. Notice the number here's changed too. I get a number 2 indicating that there's now 2 items attached to this recording. Okay, and same item, right? Same with your multi-select here. If you check off multiple recordings all at one time, time saver here, go up through your Actions menu, notice there's an Attach File icon. Not necessarily an icon, but an item under your menu. Choose your file again, browse, grab your PNP here. Now that's been appended to both of those calls, right? Time saver. We're all about the time savers. quickly, let's talk about our comment text, right? We've seen how we can attach items. You can also include comments to items as well. So if you do prefer using comments to say these are great training calls, or maybe you have a case number or some other item that you want to add a comment about, you can add that right here. So you can go ahead and say, this is a great training call. And that's it. Now that comment's been appended to this recording here. And if I load that recording into the media player, we'll notice that comment at the very beginning of the call. This is a great training call, but why is this a great training call? Or maybe you plan on pushing this out to a new hire, right? So if you push this out to a new hire, maybe you want to say to this new hire, hey, pay attention right here, and add your comment. And then you could say, pay attention here to how the agent handled a grumpy customer, right? Notice I can get really granular and time specific here and click my OK button. Now we see two different comments, right? One pertaining to the entire call, one pertaining to a particular spot within the call. All right, two different comments. Great way to locate a call later on down the road when you're looking for those training calls, right? Using your filters. Comments and attachments. Very, very powerful. Now that we've added these attachments, right, and comments, maybe now what I want to do is export those to my new hires or to those agents that maybe have policies and procedures that they need to listen to or review, right? We want to get those out to them. How do I do that? Well, I've got this one call here. Check that box. Go up through our Actions menu. Now, hopefully you guys see this theme here that I keep going to my Actions menu, and this is where I go for a lot of my items, right? And I always say this during my training, as I'm sure some of you that are on the call with me now have heard me say this multiple times. When in doubt, look under your Actions menu, right? It's where everything, almost everything lives, right? Flags, comments, attachments, performing a new evaluation, assigning coaching, but exporting lives right under here. So what I can now do, and I'm going to show you guys how to save as, okay? This is saving your files to a particular file or just to your desktop if you choose. I'm going to choose my desktop because I want you guys to see the different file types. So I can save as a secure attachment. The secure attachment is an executable file, cannot necessarily be manipulated, okay, but what's great about it is that it can't be manipulated, okay? However, the recipient of this, the executable file, does need to have Windows Media Player 10 and the .NET Framework in order to be able to open this. Another great feature of the secure attachment is that you can choose to include attachments. So those attachments that I've included to this recording will go along with it if I choose to include them here, okay? I can also include call details here, and when I say call details, that means that Adam Anthony's name is going to go along with this attachment, and any other information that's being passed over from your phone system to vPortal, that's also going to be included. So if you choose to exclude that information, you want it to be anonymous, uncheck that top box. We also notice I can password protect this item. Okay, currently in my system, it's not mandatory for me to include a password, but I do want to show you that this is really going to help me secure this item. I'm going to go ahead and save this and save it to my desktop. Forgive my desktop, it is quite messy, but you can see the export right here. This is my VPI Pack and Go player. This is my exe file, and if I double click on that, It's going to load what looks like a mini media player. First thing it's going to ask me for, though, is that security password that I put to it, right? So if you were to send this over to somebody, the wrong person, let's say, and they try to go and open this, they're going to be really curious, right? But they won't be able to open it because they don't have the security password. So that truly makes it secure when you put a password to it. Now look, when I open this up, what I get a mini media player along with those attachments. The recipient's going to get those attachments. They'll be able to open them, right? They'll be able to play back the media and review the PNP that you included. So this executable file is great for if you want to include those attachments, include those comments, right? All of that information could go along with it if you choose to include it. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my window here, and we're going to go ahead and choose our second option. Okay, that was just one of the ways to export. Our second option, going through our Actions menu, Export, Save As, is going to be my unsecure options. Unsecures are going to come to you as a WAV file. Okay, the reason we call them unsecure is because they're WAV files which can be manipulated in a third-party application, right? And the media can then be edited, which is why we call them that. The unsecure attachment here, I gain an introduction. I can't include those attachments. Notice that, right? So unsecure is great if you just want to push out a WAV file quickly to somebody, right, without all of the fancy schmancy stuff. Okay. Unsecure attachments will come to you as a zip file with separate WAV files inside of them. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we'd have the WAV file with separate audio files inside of it. You would be able to do the same thing, right, with the third option, which is your unsecure single file audio only. That's literally what it's going to do. It's going to just save those files as audio files only, okay, in one single WAV for you. It's a great one. But just so you guys are aware, you do have the 3 separate options. The reason I wanted to put most emphasis on that executable file is because we've now learned how to attach and include those attachments and comments in that particular export option. Okay, you guys, we're pretty close to the end here, but we have covered off all of the 7 key areas that we set out to kind of cover, right? We went over setting up your start page, quick links, modifying your layout, right, under your search menu here, changing your layout, effective use of your hyperfilters, right? We now know how to use those filters. We know that this is a temporary way to set up your filters versus your permanent way, going through search, modify, right? We know how to add flags now. We know how to add attachments, and we know how to export those items, right, along with the attachments if necessary. And then we also know how to create some custom searches of our own. Going through this window over here, you guys can have as many custom searches as you want. So I hope that you guys have learned quite a few things today, okay? I'm really interested to hear some of your questions, your comments, your feedback is always useful. So please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. We will be performing these webinars on a quarterly basis going forward. Our next one is going to be on automating your QA process using business rules. So I hope some of you will attend that as well. All right, you guys, I really, really appreciate your time. I hope you have a happy Friday and a great Labor Day weekend. And please, again, feel free to reach out to me at any point. Thank you guys so much for attending. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen at this point. Thank you so much.